Hi Stampers, this is Stephanie Tsang for Stephanie Tsang Creations, and today I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques that you can do with the stencils that you received in your March paper pumpkin, which is the Here's to You, and it came with a free gift of a sponge and 4 different stencils, and there's a lot you can do with those, and today I will show you a few of these techniques. So let's start by looking at the 4 stencils that we got. So there's the Sunburst, and these are made with an acetate type of material, so you can keep reusing them. There is also the Mountainscape, the Clouds, and the Stars. And we have other designs in the catalog, so if you really like this technique of using stencils, then feel free to have a look in the catalog towards the back, or just look on the online store and you will find different patterns that we have. The first tip that I have for you is to cut your sponge when you get it. So it comes as a big round sponge like this, but you can cut it in at least in 4. And depending on what you prefer, you could also cut it in 6 pieces. I feel like 8 might be a little small, but that way you can use different colors, and it's a little easier to manage. So you would pinch the top like this and then work your way with the rounded part. Some people will also even punch with a round or kind of label type of punch, a piece of cardstock that is matching the color that you're using. Fold it in 2 and staple it, so that's a handle, and it's also a quick way to recognize the color. I know some people are very strict about never mixing the colors. Personally, I don't mind if it's a lighter color than going to a darker shade. I just make sure that it's really dry, so I will use a piece of paper towel or something, make sure there's no more ink coming off the sponge because I don't want to mess up my pad. So the first technique, of course, will be to use the sponges as it comes in your kit, and you can use that with ink pads. There's also the sponge rollers that you can use, the blending brushes, and you can do techniques with Versamark as well. You can also use other things like spritzer and so on, but these are the ones I will show you today. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to show you these samples here that I've already made to give you a different idea of the style. So for the stars here, I've used the blending brushes, and you can really play with the shading, so you can keep adding more ink to the top and go lighter at the bottom. For the sunburst, here is the one I did with the sponge roller. For the mountains, I've used the sponges from the kit, and I did use 2 colors. So I did the full thing in a light gray first, and then I added just a little bit of a teal in some places just to add a bit of shade and play with the coloring. For this one here, what I did is I used Versamark and then white embossing folder that I heat set, and then I've used the sponge to add the green color, the light blue color, sorry, and then with a piece of paper towel, I just remove the ink that's from the embossing. That's called the emboss resist technique, and then your clouds come out shiny and white, and you get the color at the back. So let's start with the sponges. In your paper pumpkin kit, there's always this piece of cardboard at the back of the instructions where all your materials are shrink wrapped. So make sure you keep that. It's a really good background when you do a bunch of different things. And today it's going to help us because, as you can see, the ink goes around and you don't necessarily want it to go on your projects or something else. The stencils in this kit, the gift that came with the kit, are 4x4. So I went ahead and cut some pieces of paper that are 4x4. Today I'm just using basic white here, but really you can go and play with different colors. Just using some masking tape. If you have washi tape or something like that, post-it notes, you can use them. and then just to keep everything in place. So it does make it much easier. Of course, you can just hold it down with your fingers, but I like to make sure everything stays in place and I can really play around with that. So I'm going to do a similar thing that I did here, which is using two colors. So I have Smoky Slate and here I have Pretty Peacock. So you're going to go ahead and squish the lid of your ink pad. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, it's going to make sense in a second. And then when you flip it open, you have ink in the lid. That avoids you having to go directly on the pad and getting too much ink or drying up your ink pad. So you can use the ink. This is a similar technique that we use in when we do watercoloring. So let me go ahead and use a sponge that's new. I'm just going to go ahead and pick up that ink. I can always put more if I need. And you want to go in a circular motion, and it does help to start off the paper or the piece that you actually want to color, just so you don't get a big dark streak when you first start. So you would go like this. Circular motion will help to get more even color. So I would go ahead and just squish and get some more ink in that lid. If you have your reinkers nearby, you can always put a few drops as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some more. I want to do a little different here and have some darker shade at the bottom, so you see that I gave it 2 layers. You can always add more color, so go light and come back if you need. It's a bit more tricky to try and remove ink if you went too dark in the first place. So here, because it's a tiny space, I'm just gonna like dab my sponge there and just press it like this. Okay, and then I'm gonna finish that with some Pretty Peacock. This one might be a little dry, so hopefully there's enough. So again, because it's a big blank space, I'm just gonna start off the paper. That way I don't get like a big streak. And I'm gonna go and mix the colors here. Just some nice effect. You can play. This is a good time to use your scrap or your grid paper and just try different combinations, see what you like. And then you can remove your stencil and you have a nice little landscape. You can see that it kind of goes on the top, so you can just trim that part, no problem. You can, if you want the border, you can keep it or you can trim it down, depends on the style you like and the look you're going for. So you have 2 examples here. For the second technique, I'm going to use the stars. Same thing, I have a piece of basic white cardstock that I cut down to 4 by 4 inches. Just gonna place my stencil, use some masking tape. This is the style I'm going for. You could easily use like a darker colored cardstock and go with some white craft ink or embossing, but for this one I'm going with the same blue, so Night of Navy. And I'm using my blending brush. I'm just going to go ahead. Again, circular motion is probably the best. It makes everything just a little smoother. And you can play with the shading here. So because it happened like this and it's darker here, I'm just going to go with it and keep adding more ink. And then kind of go down, but keep it a little more light. I didn't mention this before, but you can just use a piece of paper towel to clean your stencils when you're done. It will come off pretty easily. You don't need water or anything, and if you feel like it's still a little inked, you can always use some baby wipes or disinfecting wipes. Just gonna go again just to make sure I got a nice gradient. And let's see what happened with this one. Oh yes, we can really see the different shades. So a little darker at the top corner there going down. So pretty nice. Let's keep going. For this last one, I'm using, I think this is Pool Party cardstock. Again, cut down 4 by 4. I'm gonna use the clouds. So on the sample that I showed you before, I used white cardstock. I did emboss resist in white and then added some Pool Party ink. For this one, I'm using Pool Party cardstock. I'm going to use the Versamark, some white embossing powder. I'm just going to dab my little buddy just to remove the static. So for this, I'm just going to go directly with my pad to the cardstock. These are big, open shapes and spaces. So this is my, just going to secure that a bit more. Make sure nothing moves. So I have my Versamark, just making sure I got every piece. Okay, I think my pad's going to need re-inking after this. And I'm gonna go ahead and remove the stencil. That didn't work quite as I wanted. I think my pad's it's getting a bit dry, so we're just gonna really smush it down. Okay, let's try to be quick. There, I see it. I'm going to add the powder. So you want to be pretty quick to add your powder because you don't want your Versamark to dry. And then you can take a minute to go heat set it. So what I'm going to do is, you can see there's ink that went in there when I moved. I'm going to use a little brush and just remove what I don't want. Let's see if I have something nearby. This is wet, so I'm gonna just pause the video. I'm gonna use a little brush and come brush the pieces that I don't want, and I'm gonna show you the result in a second. So just to show you, I'm just using a small paintbrush, and I can come and just remove the powder that I don't want. Just blow lightly on it. And the powder that's on the Versamark on the adhesive will stay there, but the pieces that you don't want will come up. Now I'm gonna go and heat set it with my heat tool and show you the result. So here is the final result. So we have nice white shiny clouds. Again, you can go ahead and trim or keep the border as you wish. So let me show you everything that we did. with these stencils. So just to recap, we've used the blending brush for this one, the sponge roller for the sunburst, just sponges here for the mountainscape, and Versamark and powder for the skies. So, and here are your stencils that you got in your March paper pumpkin kit. If you missed out on the kit, we do have sponges and stencils and all of these in our catalog, so feel free to hit me up and ask me about them if you are interested in these really fun techniques. They're really fun to try with kids as well, and just to add something different to your projects. I hope that you enjoyed these techniques today to use with your free gift that you received in your March paper pumpkin. Happy stamping!